I'm Dan Polk, and welcome to another episode of American Peasants. Good coffee and a really good time here. Beautiful spring day. Working in my vegetable garden where I love to be, here on the southern Oregon coast. It's early April and just getting into moving the dirt around and getting things ready for planting. You know, if you look at where we are, let's cut to a satellite image. I just live in a normal house, and the square to the right there, take to the right of the house, that's where we are. We're in the backyard of my home. Average sized backyard, maybe even a little smaller than average. The rectangle to the left of the house is my fruit orchard, and we'll go there in a subsequent episode, and I'll explain the culture of fruit trees and all the good things you can do. You know, year after year, I have proven that in this small space, I can grow bushels and pounds, many pounds, of fresh fruits and vegetables, organic vegetables and organic fruit to feed myself and many of my friends. Well, how do we do it? You know, and why do we do it? It is healthy. It is good exercise. You know where your food comes from, and it's a lot of fun. So let's get started. This backyard was transformed into a very productive vegetable garden, as well as this bed here. And actually, this is where I started. This was nothing more than a grassy strip with there was a clothesline in here. We know the soil's in good shape because even the clods, when they're moist, will crumble. They don't stick together. That's many, many years of soil amendments and working with the soil. And you never want to start too early in the spring. Now let's talk about tools. In order to grow a vegetable garden, you do need a few rudimentary tools. And that's what I'm going to show you right now. If I had to pick one tool, and there are several here, if I had to pick just one, where I can dig, remove soil, do all the things I need to do, it would probably be the round-headed shovel. Because it's a multi-purpose tool. This happened to have a very strong fiberglass handle and lasted for many years, and you'll probably notice I have sanded and kept this oiled, so my tools last me a long time. And I'll just go right down the line. A hoe is good for moving dirt around, and particularly if it's kept sharp, good for weeding. Now this is the flat-headed hoe or flat-bladed hoe. The big digging fork, not like pitchfork you might see, grapes of wrath and so forth, but this is for actually breaking up soil, heavy soil. This is very instrumental when I was building the beds and breaking up the soil for the first time. Triangular hoe, also called an onion hoe, good for detail work and good for drawing a straight line, showing where to plant. Also good for weeding in its own way. The short and flat-bladed shovel, which is good for deep work, making sure you have a straight cut all along and putting in some beds. Valuable tool. Basic heavy-duty rake, good for moving soil around where you want it, raking out the clods, which can either be ground up or trod harmlessly in the paths, as Steve Solomon says. One of my dad's favorite tools is a tiling or trenching spade. Great for assisting in planting those fruit trees we'll talk about. And again with a fiberglass handle. And again, this shovel is many years old, a spade, and has served me very well, but I've kept it in very good shape and good repair by keeping it sanded and well oiled. A big scoop shovel is also known as a grain shovel or grain scoop. This one's out of aluminum, some are fiberglass. This one I think lasts a little bit longer, tends to fragment less. The wood handle I can see maybe you could use a little bit of extra TLC, but again, good for moving lots of dirt at a time or lots of other materials, gravel and so forth. Hand trowel, good for planting bulbs if you're into ornamentals, digging up weeds, digging around things. Trowel's pretty indispensable. Finally, for us small town and city and urban gardeners that have concrete, a good push broom is indispensable for cleanup. That concludes the tool section, and let's move on now to talking about fertilizer. You can't put enough nutrition into the soil before you plant, nor can you make up for it as plants are growing with side dressing and side amending. You have to do both. So I like to prepare the soil in the springtime, let the nutrients start to break down, and then add nutrients and customize my mix throughout the growing season. And there are three main nutrients, and we count water as one too actually, because without water, the plants cannot transport the nutrients into their cells. So we'll talk about that as well. But nitrogen. Nitrogen helps, we're going to find that from our cottonseed. Nitrogen helps the green part of the plants, vegetative. Phosphorus. We're going to find this in our bone meal. And in bone meal you find the phosphorus to help the plant's overall structure and also the flowering period. Potassium, found in our kelp meal. And these are all organic fertilizers, by the way. Won't be getting into chemical Miracle-Gro stuff in this segment. Potassium also helps with overall development, building a strong plant. I can go on all the chemistry of it later. I'm just giving you the basics. Lime is going to have many of your trace elements, chiefly the minerals magnesium and calcium. Helps to make fruit sweeter, and plants cannot absorb all the other nutrients without those two, and also the trace elements. And water, of course, I asked an older lady one time, I said, when do you water your tomatoes? She said, when they're dry. Let's mix up some fertilizers. Now in our soil, this is custom for our soil, but I believe in lots of nitrogen to start off with. We're going to get that from our cottonseed meal. You want 4 parts of cottonseed meal. And I've got a pot here, has some holes in the bottom, we'll see how we go. So, count with me. And again, this is no perfect science. 1, 2, 3, 4, again, cottonseed meal for our nitrogen. Bone meal for phosphorus. 1 part of bone meal. Now, later in the season, as plants begin to fruit and flower, you want to have more phosphorus to support that process. 1 part of phosphorus, bone meal. And there are other sources. You can do your research. These are all available at our local garden store. 1 part of kelp meal, where potassium's coming from. And 1 part of lime, a generous helping of lime, for those trace elements. Now, I'm just going to mix this up carefully. If you can come over here and we'll get a shot of this. If I get that lime in there, we'll get a little bit less particulate matter in the air. And let's talk now next about applying the fertilizer. Now that we have our fertilizer mixed up, we can begin to put it down into the ground, on the ground, so the soil can begin to break this down with all the elements and get it into the soil. And just handfuls. I just try to liberally sprinkle it around. Not too heavy, not too light in any area, and so on down the bed. Now that we have our fertilizer actually on the ground, let's work it into the ground. And I would use the round-headed shovel for this. And just begin. It's simple again. This isn't, again, you've heard the expression, this isn't rocket science. Just turn it over. And that allows this fertilizer to be distributed pretty much evenly, because the roots of the plant are going to want to find water, and they want to find the most fertile substrate they can grow in. And I would just continue to do this. Boy, this dirt is lovely. You know, working with different kinds of soil, often a composter comes in handy, and I've opened this up and we'll take a look inside in just a minute. But adding organic material, vegetable scraps, broken down cuttings, all sorts of things. Manure, horse manure particularly, is the very best. In a composter, we can break things down and we can move back to the soil. And that's going to enrich clay soils and otherwise soils that are impoverished and don't have enough organic matter to, again, they should just crumble. Okay, your soil should just be crumbled. It should all crumble apart, all nice. This means that the roots can find plenty of purchase, and they can absorb water and nutrients, and they can spread and grow, and they're not going to be stunted by a bunch of clods. Anyway, this is a drum type composter, and organic matter goes inside, and you can add water if you like when it's dry, and just tumble it. Tumble it over and over, and again, this is what's come out of it. And it's so low. This is almost all broken down. There's even things growing in there now as we speak. But this is almost ready to go back into the garden as lovely organic matter. Came out of the kitchen, came from clippings and so forth. There's no manure in there, which is too bad. But good for the garden, good for your kitchen as well. Let's move on. As I mentioned earlier, I live on the southern Oregon coast, very, very wet maritime climate. And this year was no exception. It's one of the wettest years I remember in 30 years of living here. And wood heat is an important part of what I do to stay warm. Keeps the house dry and free of mold. And there's nothing like wood heat to go right into your bones and keep you warm and happy through the winter. So this is my woodshed. We don't need to explore. It's pretty well provisioned. But wood stays dry in here, and it served another purpose through the years with my vegetable garden. Which is cold storage for many crops, particularly onions. Now this is a red storage onion I grew last year. You can see it's beginning to sprout again this year with the longer days. Onions are photosensitive, photoreactive. I actually can't off the top of my head remember the exact term, but they respond with bulbing to the length of day, so choose the proper variety. Again, we'll get into this next episode. And then these are shallots, and both of these were remarkable, and they're just still so lovely. They're fantastic. And I just stored them in my woodshed, the door of which was open much of the year. But they were kept, the woodshed's a very dry environment, they were kept out of the direct elements, and these are just perfectly edible for the table to this day, and they've been in there for 9 months, say. Here we are in my home orchard. This is in the front yard of my home, and it's an absolute joy to grow fruit trees for your own pleasure and to supply your family and friends with the fresh fruit of summertime. This is a post hole digger. I thought I'd start with this. I planted all the trees in this yard, and I believe there are 11, with this post hole digger. Manual operation, pretty simple. Go as deep as 6 or 8 feet if you want to. There are extensions, but to initiate the hole, you just turn counterclockwise and begin to extract the earth that way. I better set this aside and give you a little tour. So it's blossom time, and these are 2 heirloom apples. And we'll come back to these, but I think I'll start with the plum trees. Camera person wants to follow me down here. These are all Italian prunes, and they are self-fertile. They just produce pounds and pounds and pounds of plums during the year. And these are the oval purple plums, freestone variety, where pit separates from the flesh. Very easy to grow. They have seemed to take a little bit longer to mature. I think these trees are 5 or 6 years old. Moving swiftly along. Carmine de Sonneville, Dutch apple, Boskoop apple, 2 Dutch varieties with some Cox's orange pippin parentage. Most of these are available in your nursery houses. Fuji apple, Victoria plum, and again, the reason I'm expounding just a little bit is these are all good varieties for the home. I think in all the zones, the USDA zones, these are all good for the home grower. Victoria plum, really common English variety. Apparently thousands of those all across England in gardens and orchards. Santa Rosa plum, which I believe is a Japanese variant, not sure, produced probably 100 pounds of plums last year. If we can follow through this way through the maze. And that's what makes it fun. Now these trees are pruned for production rather than ornamental value. And again, they just produce and produce and produce. All about between 5 and 7 years old. Both of these, both the Fuji and Liberty, so named because it's fairly disease-free, are pruned more like bonsai, so I can get to them and get to the fruit and take care of them more easily. The one tree I had a question about, not declared a disappointment yet, is a pear tree. You want to come this way? It was sold to me as an apple. Turns out it was a pear, and up until this year it hasn't seemed to produce a lot. Apparently pear blossoms are relatively unattractive to bees, but maybe this year is going to be the year. We're going to go to a close-up here. There are hundreds of small pears all over this tree. You can see the blossom on the other end, and they're beginning to develop. Well, that's going to conclude our talk about the home orchard. I will say, you want to site your orchard and garden where we have good sun, it's well drained, you can't grow in a swamp. But there are 90% of American homes are situated in such a place, even in the city. Back to the garden. We're going to take a little walk, and let's get there. So we're going to walk back to my garden here in a moment, but I want to re-emphasize, this is not a giant parcel of land. You can do a lot with a small area. And I just want to cut away to a satellite picture. This is from Google Earth. This is the aerial view of my house, and the rectangle to the left, my house is there at the top, and there's my neighbor's house at the bottom, which you can see in the background. That is the house to the bottom of the photo. At any rate, my house, just an average size house with average size front and backyard. The rectangle to the left of the house is where we're standing right now. That's the fruit orchard. The rectangle to the back of the house, to the right of the house, is the vegetable garden, where we're going to take a walk in just a minute. 2 average size yards, front and back. On a city lot, you can do a ton. And I would encourage you to try that. Let's take a walk. I'm walking out to the south side of my house, and you can see I don't even have really great southern exposure here. It's more east and west. And so the camera person can keep up here. This is the narrow pathway in between my neighbor's house and mine. Walking back to the vegetable garden. And I'm back here all the time, back and forth, all throughout the year. And this is the vegetable garden that we saw in the earlier segment. All ready for planting. I'm not quite there yet. The ground's just getting dry enough. And I'm working out the last of the clods and amendments. The next segment you'll see is going to be devoted to planting and getting the garden started for the summer. At any rate, happy growing. Dan Polk for American Peasants. The aim of this video series is to promote not only health and independence, but also sustainability. And I can't end this segment without talking just a little bit about the clothesline. The towels are flapping here in the north wind, and the high pressure we get often this time of year. Clothesline lets you give your dryer a rest and dries the clothes automatically. And there's something that's infinitely cheery about seeing clothes on the line. Apart from the way they feel and smell, which is terrific, there's a sense of well-being and there's a sense of connectedness to the past that I really enjoy. And I put the clothesline up several years ago, and I've used it every day that it's fair, and some days that are not, to dry particularly towels, t-shirts, jeans, and so forth, and I've never regretted. Very, very good investment for the American peasant. Signing off for now. I hope you've enjoyed this informative segment. More to come. Happy growing to you.